All right, so I've already thoroughly sanded these pieces here for the angled multi-bin made specifically for Journeys in Middle-earth Spreading War. So this is going to be different slightly, just in dimensions, from the one that came with the base organizer. So you're going to want to make sure everything's thoroughly sanded before you put it together. It's much easier to sand before you put it together than after you put it together. And oftentimes you can have laser burn marks, or just the wood can be a little bit rougher than you might like. So I strongly recommend sanding it thoroughly with maybe some 150 to 220 grit sandpaper. And that way my stuff will look nice. I want my stuff to look nice on your table. I don't call it tabletop envy for nothing. I want your friends to envy this thing. Now, actually, one thing I should point out, this is probably not a good idea to put that up there on that end, or at least that much, because glue near these fingers can end up squeezing out in a way that might make this thing difficult to open or close after you get it assembled. So you want to be really careful not to put glue in an area that will squeeze out into these little channels here. So I'm going to put this together. You could go ahead and put some glue along here too. I'm going to do that. Yeah, you know what? I'll go ahead and do that now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put some glue along these finger joints as well. Now, these will not meet at a 90-degree angle. They're going to meet at a 45-degree angle. This glue is really just going to be there for reinforcement rather than actual adhesion. All right, so now I'm going to lift up the back and one of these two sides. And I'm going to do the other one. So these two right angles here should help kind of stabilize the thing. Right angles here and here. And then I'm going to bring this upward. You might need to hold these things as you do this. Bring this upward and marry those joints together here. There we are. And this is one of the places where the tacky glue can really come in handy, because the only thing that's holding this thing up at the 45-degree angle is the tackiness of the glue. I had tried doing this at one point with some less viscous wood glue and found that doing specifically something like this is more problematic. In addition to having different dimensions than the angled multi-bin that's in the base set, well, because of those different dimensions, we then have this different shape for the outside part here. The reason for that is that we have this longer sort of lever here, and as you push down here, it would tend to tip this thing. So these will keep that from tipping. All right, so we want to put the glue on these parts, not on the part that's going onto it, right? Not on the other part. We want to put it on the part that's already assembled. Now, you don't want to risk getting glue into these little channels here. So I'm going to be really conservative when it comes to how close to that I'm going to put my glue. If you really, really wanted to, you could put just a teeny, tiny little bit of glue on the end of these things. It's not really necessary, but if it just gives you some peace of mind, then you can do that. But I would rather err on the side of not getting squeezed out. Did I get squeezed out there? Nope, I'm good. All right, or at least squeeze out into those channels, because then that will make it difficult to either open or close. All right, so I'm not going to bother putting it here. These things are short enough that you don't really need them glued together. Right. So I'm then going to put that on like that. Okay. So now at this point, as I push here, it doesn't tend to lever the thing downward as it would have without these little things on the ends. Now, I usually like to go ahead and put in some of these in order to give this something to push against when I bind this up with rubber bands. So these are some of the removable and repositionable dividers in here. So you can divide this up in whatever way you see fit to fit your smaller cardboard pieces and other sorts of tokens and such. Right. Here we are. So I've got those in there. And I did put some curvature in these on both of these sides so that that glue that's along the rows of finger joints there won't grab these things. So here's the lid. Again, you want to double check and make sure that it looks like you don't have any glue squeeze out in these channels. If you do, now would be the time to get a toothpick or something like that to go in there and wipe that glue out of those channels. Actually, this is a little close to where the lid's going to be here, so go ahead and do that. All right, so now I'm going to drop this lid in, and I'm going to pop it back into place. There we are. And then I'm going to put some rubber bands around it to make sure that it is nice and tightly bound. And then, just because these things need to be tight in here, I'm going to take this, not going to wrap it over quite so many times because this is much longer, and I'm going to put a couple going around like this. Again, there are other ways you could do this if you happen to be somebody who has a lot of clamps sitting around from other craft projects or handyman projects or something like that. You can feel free to use them. I've got some things like this sitting around. I don't want to tell you that you need to get things like that. You can do this all with rubber bands and binder clips and glue that you can get at Michael's just as easily as you can get fancy with it. So whatever makes sense to you. All right, so there we go. That will just need to cure, and then we will take off the rubber bands and put it away in the organizer itself.